House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. Congressman, it is good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you. Good morning.
You've seen a number of hurricanes on your watch, that's for sure. What are we prepared to act?
The federal government's prepared. President Trump's made it clear FEMA's ready to go in. The most important thing is for people at the local level to listen to your local leaders. Look, if you're in North or South Carolina, this is a massive storm. I was in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina came. It literally took up half the Gulf of Mexico, and we were encouraging people to evacuate. Same thing needs to happen here. If you're in the path of this storm, get out of harm's way, and then ultimately when it's time for FEMA to come in to help local responders, FEMA is ready to go, and they play an important role in helping keep people get back into their homes and get their communities going again.
Now, Democrats this morning are slamming the Trump administration, you know, for reportedly shifting $10 million from the FEMA budget to support U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. It comes just ahead of Hurricane Florence's expected landfall in the Carolinas this week. But the Department of Homeland Security says what was transferred could not have gone into hurricane response anyway. Your reaction to all of this?
FEMA has all the money they need to respond, and if they were a dime short, Congress would be right there to make sure that we filled whatever shortfall there is. There is no shortfall. Democrats don't like ICE. They want to abolish ICE. So, you know, let's be clear about the politics. These are really bad politics for Democrats to play because the federal government is ready, and everybody knows FEMA is not a political agency. They're there to help people, and they've got all the money they need. And if they come up short because there's some big storm, we'll come back and give them more. But Democrats have been wanting to abolish ICE, so anything that's done to keep ICE funded, they're against. This has nothing to do with FEMA. FEMA's ready to go. President Trump has made that very clear.
So that's what this is about then. I mean, going into the midterm elections, we're hearing a lot of noise. You've been traveling. Your colleagues have been traveling a lot. Tell us where you stand in terms of what you're expecting for the midterms. Will you be able to hold on to the majority?
I think we will because, frankly, the economy is going so well and people recognize what we've done to cut taxes working with President Trump, and people are being hired now that we're unemployed. People are getting bonuses and pay raises, and Pelosi wants to undo that if she's Speaker again. Pelosi wants to abolish ICE if she's Speaker again, and people don't want to go there. They're not buying into this socialism that literally has taken over the Democrat Party in Washington, and even Democrats around the country, Maria. I come from South Louisiana where the Blue Dogs started. You know, there used to be conservative Democrats, and in Washington, they've basically eviscerated them all. And socialists are beating liberals in Democrat primaries right now. So people don't want to go that far to the left. And so that's what's at stake in this November's election.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what's going on in the Democratic Party where you have these really extreme lefties winning.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that say about where the people are going into the November elections?
Well, I think if you look at the Democrat primaries, and it's a very small subset because it's low turnout, but you saw that with Joe Crowley, very, very low turnout. But, you know, he's a liberal. He wouldn't call himself a moderate, but he wasn't liberal enough for that part of New York, and a socialist beat him. You go look at Mike Capuano, a really good friend, but a liberal Democrat in Boston. Again, wouldn't call himself a moderate, but he's liberal, and he was beat by a socialist. So when a liberal is not liberal enough for Democrat primaries, it tells you their party's shifting to the left, but the country is not shifting that far to the left. The country, this isn't a socialist nation. It's a center-right nation, and they like these tax cuts. They like what President Trump is doing. Look, the Kavanaugh hearings show people what's at stake. Democrats would have had somebody so far to the left that they would have made Ruth Bader Ginsburg look moderate. And now you've got Gorsuch on the bench. You've got Kavanaugh getting ready to go on the bench. That's why elections are so important.
Well, you know, you make a good point because 2 Supreme Court justice picks by President Trump has unnerved the left, and they're going insane over it. And that was on display in the Kavanaugh hearings. Do you think that's going to impact the midterms? The fact that they're just obstructing. They wanted to shut that hearing down.
Yeah, I think it looked disgraceful on the Democrats' part. It was like this tryout for the Democrat nominee for president in 2020, where you have Kamala Harris going over here, and then so Cory Booker's got to look more to the left than her, and almost encouraging and begging people to kick him out of the Senate so that he can be a martyr. I mean, people are looking at that going, what are you guys doing? I mean, there was an election.
Was it all a lie?
There will be a vote.
Question him on. The documents were all out already, right?
Question him on his rulings, and they couldn't find anything wrong with his rulings. Kavanaugh did such a great job during those hearings, and people are yelling and screaming and trying to interrupt and literally trying to disrupt the results of the election. President Trump was very clear. There was the opening because of Scalia, and he said these are the people that I would pick on the Supreme Court, and it was a great list of people. Gorsuch was probably the best person. Hillary Clinton never put out a list, and Maria, nobody questioned her because they knew it would be a radical liberal that she would place on the bench. President Trump actually said here's the list. Go look at these people. This is what we'll put on the bench. And he's following through on those promises like he is on so many other things.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say you keep the majority. What will be your priorities in terms of economic policy? We've got taxes and trade obviously front and center. President Trump is still talking tough on China. Yeah. He says the NAFTA negotiations with Canada, though, are coming along. Here's what the president just said yesterday.
Trade talks are coming along very well. We're dealing with China, as you know. We've taken a very tough stand on China, I would say, to put it mildly. And with Canada, they want to make a deal very much. Me, if we make it, that's good. If we don't make it, that's okay, too.
Of course, this follows new plans for phased tax reform phase 2. This would make the cuts for individuals and small businesses permanent. Give us your list of the priorities should you keep the majority.
Well, we're still working on Tax Cuts 2.0. Tomorrow, Kevin Brady's committee, the Ways and Means Committee, will start work on that, and let's move that. But look, next year, we've got to hold the House, but if we get more Senate seats, which I think we will, we've got to go back to health care. Obamacare's only getting worse. There is no private marketplace for families out there. Our bill that we almost passed, we passed it in the House by 1 vote. It failed in the Senate by 1 vote. Let's come back and get that bill passed on President Trump's desk, and you literally transform health care and allow people to have choices for health care at lower costs, and transform Medicaid, by the way, which is the most failed part of health care, block granting that to the states so governors can actually run it better than Washington. Then let's get spending under control. With a growing economy, you're going to continue to see more jobs, higher wages. These are really good benefits for middle-class families, those people that were left behind who elected President Trump. They're actually the biggest winners from these tax cuts, and that's growing the federal treasury. Let's continue to get that growth and then work towards balancing the federal budget.
Yeah, you cut all tax rates and you doubled the standard deduction, so you would expect that everybody is feeling an impact.
It's working well.
But there's still this attack on conservatives that will not stop. Just yesterday, a California man allegedly attempted to stab a GOP congressional candidate while shouting profanities about President Trump. Congressman, you were a victim of this yourself. Politically motivated attacks, the shooting at the baseball field, at baseball practice, the rash of threats in recent months have sparked Congress to pledge an additional $1 million to security for lawmakers. Tell us about it. What do you want to see?
Well, first of all, Maria, there's no place for this in American politics. I mean, the great thing about America is we can disagree with each other and our government, and there are no consequences for that because, you know, in other countries, they actually put people in jail for it. But we don't resort to violence, and we settle our differences at the ballot box. Democrats need to be denouncing this, just like Republicans are. If some conservative was out there doing this, we would be denouncing it, both Republicans and Democrats.
No one's denounced it on the left.
Leadership on the Democrat side needs to stand up and say this is wrong. Whatever your differences are with the president or anybody else, you go and you solve them. We're going to have an election in a few weeks. That's how you resolve this. You don't resort to violence. There's no place for it. They need to denounce it just like we do.
But is it coming from the leadership? I mean, Maxine Waters gave a press conference, and basically told everybody, when you see people from the administration, tell them they're not welcome. Tell them to get out. And that's what happened. They pushed Sarah Sanders out of a restaurant. They pushed Kirstjen Nielsen out of a restaurant.
Right. We saw it, and there's no place for that. Again, they need to be denouncing this, not encouraging it. They need to be denouncing it, and they need to be called out because, look, if you saw this happening on the right, you know where the mainstream media would be. The mainstream media needs to be in the same place, calling this out too, and calling on leaders on the Republican and Democrat side to denounce it. There's no place for it on either side.
But the media isn't. The mainstream media is actually driving the bus on all of this for the skeptics. I mean, look at what happened yesterday. Joe Scarborough from MSNBC. Now, this morning, he's admitting that he should have shown more care in his 9/11 tweet yesterday. His 9/11 tweet accused President Trump of posing a greater threat to America than any terrorist attack. Then there's Congresswoman, as I said, Maxine Waters, vowing to, quote, get him, repeating the word impeachment multiple times. The Joe Scarborough tweet was incredible. He tweets out on the day before September 11th, Donald Trump is a bigger risk than any terrorist attack ever could be.
That's disgraceful, Maria. And again, what is he trying to say? I mean, does he really understand the impact here in this city of what yesterday means to the thousands of people who died, the family members who still grieve from the losses? You know, we meet with the firefighters and the law enforcement officers who were on the scene, who ran to danger. President Trump has been standing up for those American values and ideals. And look, if Joe disagrees with the president, again, the American people spoke. There are elections that resolve these issues, and President Trump was duly elected. He won a lot of states, by the way, that people didn't think he would win because there are forgotten men and women who weren't voting for Republicans or Democrats who said, you know what, this guy's going to fight for me.
Yeah.
And President Trump is fighting for those people. And that's why, look, this is going to backfire on them. If they continue to kind of look down on the American voters, the American voters are going to show up again and say, look, we like this direction. This guy actually promised things, and he's delivering.
Right.
We ought to reward that, not discourage it.
Real quick, you're going to be able to fund the government before the deadline, September 30th this month, without a government shutdown?
Yeah, we're moving the bills this week, and in the next few weeks, we're going to be passing those bills on to President Trump's desk. And, you know, whatever the left wants to do, we're going to be fighting these issues out over the next few weeks in all these battleground districts. Don't try to play games with our military funding and other things. It backfired on them in the Schumer shutdown. We're going to do our job, and then let's go battle it out amongst the voters of this country over which direction. Do they want to keep growing the economy and having tax cuts, or do they want this socialist agenda where they want to abolish ICE and take more money out of your paycheck?
We just saw 2 quarters of 4% plus economic growth. Pretty good stuff.
How great is that?
Congressman, it's great to see you.
Let's do more.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Rita.
much.
Great to
Thank
be
you
with
so
you.
much. Congressman Steve Scalise joining us there.